We talked about lining up the stories. We talked about making sure you have stories that map to each of the dimensions we talk about, writing out in like, narrative form, maybe journaling on just like what happened, just to kind of get it all available, and like really making sure that the learnings from the stories are clear and top of mind. Any other specific like tips that you'd give people on how to like practice and get ready for this interview?
One is to actually work with someone else and ask them, do you see any other traits or interesting aspects of this story? Because I quite often, a client will share a story with me and I'll say, oh, this is also a really good fit for this kind of question. And I think often we can have a kind of uh, a slightly narrow view of our own story. And if you share it with someone else, they're like, oh, hang on, that sounds like you had to do a lot of conflict resolution. Oh yeah, I guess I did. So either probably another PM or a coach or somebody, but they can give you that perspective, which might make your stories more versatile than you think. And that's definitely something that I see happen quite regularly. So yeah, work with another person, and it's not exactly a mock. It's more of a kind of, hey, what do you think about this story? Where could it be? How could I use it? How might I use it?
Any just like before we move on to Brian, any Robert, do you have any thoughts on people on how to like identify if it's not like a mock? Is it like, do you recommend it be with someone who's like worked at the company where they're interviewing, or like any qualifications or
Yeah,
criteria you'd list?
I think working at the company, that can be hard to find, but I think there are ways to do that. I think you're working on something like that, Ben, to help people get connected with someone who is at the company right now. That's definitely preferable. Ideally a calibrated interviewer, but yeah, somebody who's worked there, somebody who's working there now. Those are all good things. But I think someone who's been a PM for a while is better than nothing. So that would be where I would kind of put the bar, is like, someone who's been a PM and been a PM in a few different organizations. I would say that's kind of the minimum qualifications for that role.
Great. Yeah, Brian, any other tips or practice advice you'd give people beyond what's been said?
Yeah, I mean, I think, STAR is not my favorite framework, but it's the framework I use for this. I think like trying to introspect or interrogate different frameworks and adapt them isn't like particular isn't isn't gonna like get you a lot of mileage relative to the things that we're talking about, like having the set of stories in memory so they're ready to be deployed, being able to improvise and talk about them in a systematic way, in an authentic and genuine way, where they are talking about failure, but they're not talking about like incompetence. Hopefully, nobody has examples of being incompetent, and like just trying to find that right balance. Talk it out, talk it out loud. And I would also say that the same rigor, the same structure should apply to this in interviews, like in the abstract, that applies to product sense and analytical thinking. If you're using an internalizing star, you should get that, but it also helps at the beginning of these interviews, like to waypoint. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example about a time there was a conflict. Here's how I'm going to break that down, and like A, B, C, and D. Now I'm doing A, now I'm doing B, now I'm doing C, D, summarize, and just like all of those good like waypointing and communication skills, and keeping your answers really down, sub 4 minutes. Target 3 minutes, because your interviewer will press in, your interviewer will prompt and provide feedback, like the example that Robert gave. So just really keeping them taut.